I really want to hammer this for a moment. Things have changed from like the 1980s to the present when it comes to how we handle the issue of hospitality. Okay, the hospitality where we like invite people over to our houses. And things have drastically changed, like the culture has shifted. And it's important to pay attention to the culture shifts. Because when we look at how the culture shifts, we need to understand that our ministries are going to have to shift. While the message of Jesus has to stay the same, how we go about presenting that or how we do ministry will have to shift and change. Sometimes ministries that were great and effective 40 years ago will have a page that has turned and will have to be something that will no longer exist, and we'll have to replace it with something new to deal with the new culture, because that's just how church goes. Okay, and that's how ministry goes. It has a birth, it has its peak, and it has its death, and that's okay. And then that ministry ends, and a new ministry is born, and we just keep going. That seems to be the idea behind that. But so let's just assess for a moment how much hospitality has changed. So I'm a child. I was born in the 70s, so I'm a child of the 80s. So I'm going to use 80s as an example. Some of you know the 80s. You were alive in the 80s. Some of you say 19 what? You're old. Like anything before 2000's old. Okay, and I run across people, and they're like, 19 what? You're ancient. I just want to kick them in the Lord. You know, and so here's what it was like in the 1980s. If there was a knock at the door or a ringing of the doorbell, everybody in the house got excited. We did. We got excited. I would sit up and like, oh, like somebody's here. You know, and then my parents would be like, oh, I wonder who that could be. And so we would just run to the door. We wouldn't look out a window. We'd run to the door. We'd open the door. And then my mom or my dad, whoever opened the door, would be like, wow, look who it is. Hey, what are you doing here? Right? Very happily. You know, not, what are you doing here? It was, what are you doing here? You know, and they're like, hey, I was in the neighborhood and thought I'd stop by. And so then we're like, hey, come on in, take a load off, have a seat. You know, my mom's already in the kitchen pulling out some snacks and some drinks, and we're just getting ready to have, like, it was a good time. It was something called company, right? And it was like great to have company over. It was such a thrill. And when they would leave, it would be like, yes, come again anytime. And they would give the offer, if you're ever in the neighborhood, in our neighborhood, please stop by. But that's how it would be in the 1980s. Fast forward to 2026. And there's a knock at the door or a ringing of the doorbell. Something's going on. And suddenly everybody, they freeze. And we all stare at each other. And we're thinking, who on earth could be out at the door? No one told us they were coming. Who on earth would have, who could that possibly be? And then the questions start coming. Like, did you order anything on Amazon? No, I didn't order anything. Did you order anything on eBay? I didn't order anything. We're not expecting a delivery, right? Nope. Look out the window. See if you can see. Check your app on the camera app. See if you can see who. See if we recognize who it is. And you know what? How about we all just be quiet and stay perfectly still? Maybe they'll go away. Right? Isn't that right? Okay, so you see the change that has taken place. Okay, which means for a church to go around knocking on doors in the 80s, people be like, hey, who are you? Welcome. What's going on? Hey, I just want to invite you to my church. Oh, how nice. What's your church like? They'll tell me about it. That's what it was like in the 80s. Today, you knock on the door. If they do answer the door, hey, I just want to invite you to my church, they go, get lost, private property, no soliciting, slam the door. Right? And now they don't want church at all because you just turned them off. Like things have changed, which means our methods have to change with it. Okay, that's just what has to happen. Okay, and so with that in mind, we have to ask ourselves some questions. What principles of the work of ministry remain the same when the ministry itself changes? Okay, so as one ministry comes to a close and a new one starts and we have to change how we do ministry, there are principles that guide the ministry to keep it proper. And we are going to learn some principles behind the ministries that other ministries, when they are born, whatever those ministries are, whether it's a diaper changing tent, whether it's a neighborhood block party, or whatever, there are some principles that we get to learn from Nehemiah 5 that will help us have an effective ministry, or at least be intentional about the ministry. Okay, that'll guide us. And then when it's time for a ministry to close, we can actually begin to evaluate these principles. Can this ministry adequately do these principles? If the answer is no, then it's time for this ministry to be over, as great as it was. And it's time to develop a new ministry that can better achieve these principles. And so we're going to look at a few principles here through Nehemiah chapter 5. So Nehemiah chapter 5, starting at verse 14. Last time we left off at verse 13, where Nehemiah was dealing with a famine in the land, dealing with people being taken advantage of, and rich people were getting richer off of the backs of the poor people. And we looked at the issue of that there are 4 categories of people: the righteous rich and the unrighteous rich, the righteous poor and the unrighteous poor, and that the goal in Scripture is not to be rich or poor, the goal is to be righteous. And that you are righteous whether rich or righteous whether poor. Like, that's the goal, is righteousness. Okay, so that's what we looked at last week. Now we're going to look at how Nehemiah sets himself up as governor of the land, and how he leads and how he serves. And the principles observed from his life will be the principles that are going to be great for ministries of today. So starting with verse 14, if you got your Bible or Bible apps, here we go. I also have the verses here. So furthermore, so Nehemiah is basically saying, just continuing on the discussion from before about people, rich people taking advantage of poor people, and they repented, and that's great. So the unrighteous, the rich who were acting unrighteous repented and started acting righteous. That's great. So then from that, furthermore, from the day King Artaxerxes appointed me to be their governor in the land of Judah, from the 20th year until the 32nd year, how long is Nehemiah there in Israel, away from Artaxerxes, working on rebuilding the wall that surrounds the city and the temple? He's been there from the 20th to the 32nd year. That is how many years? 12 years. Have you ever worked on a project that long? A single project for 12 years? Okay, like that is a long time to be away. Okay, so Nehemiah tells King Artaxerxes, I'm going to be away for a while. I want to go rebuild the wall. He's like, how long will you be gone? He's like, 12 years. And the king goes, okay, how much money do you want? And Nehemiah's like, all of it. And he goes, okay, like, here's a blank check. It's a weird situation, right? Very weird. It was totally a God thing. And so 12 years, I and my associates never ate from the food allotted to the governor. So here's how things were set up back then. It was very similar to the Jewish priest system. Okay, so here's how the Jewish priest system was set up for the temple, for the Levites who were in charge of the temple. They would not own land. They would live in the temple and around the temple, and that their food that they would eat would be the offerings and sacrifices given to the temple. Okay, so that which would be necessary for God and for worship and service would be used, and then the leftover would all go to the Levites who didn't have land. So that was their income. That was their sustenance. That was their food, was some of that which was given to the temple. Okay, kind of like a little bit how churches run today if they have full-time church staff. Where does the money come from that churches make? Okay, the money that pays for pastors and janitors and electricity and utilities and all of that, like that money, it doesn't come because the church has a lot of bake sales. It doesn't come because we have a website account that is selling a whole lot of shirts and hubcaps for cars, right? Like we're not in the selling business. It is the tithes that is given by the people for God to use for worship as well as maintaining the staff. That's what that's for, is based off of the system of the temple and the Jewish system. And so Persia worked similar ways. So their governors would work based on their taxation of the people. So they would receive the taxes from the people on their produce, and then the governor that would be their income. That would be their sustenance. And here's what Nehemiah is saying. He's saying, I didn't tax the people. Hey, could you imagine that if all of a sudden Governor Pritzker said, hey, Illinois, 0 taxes for the next 12 years? Okay. Now, if you want to see a guy get reelected right away, that's the way to do it. Like, how many people would suddenly say, you know, that guy, not as bad as I thought? A lot of people would change their mind. Even if they have a lot of moral quandaries about him, they'd be like, but who's perfect? It's amazing how much money will persuade people in very unethical ways. Okay, so it's amazing. But nonetheless, Nehemiah is being a godly guy, and he is saying, I'm not eating from the people. He's not taking taxes from the people. He's not eating food that's allotted, that is appropriate, that is legal, that is technically actually ethical and moral for him to do. Like, it is a right thing. That's how the system was set up. Okay, and he's saying he is foregoing that. So the governors who preceded me had heavily burdened the people, taking food and wine from them, as well as a pound of silver. In other words, they taxed heavy. Okay, they had property tax and land tax and cell phone tax and gas tax, and they had rain tax and paper bag usage tax, and they had air tax. Right? It was like Scrooge McDuck, or it was like President Scrooge from Spaceballs. Everything was taxed all over the place. Okay, so that's what they did before. And Nehemiah's like, man, we can't function that way right now. It's not that it's going to be this way forever, but it's going to be this way for right now. Okay, and so he says that their subordinates also oppressed the people, but I didn't do this because of the fear of God. He wanted to be holy, not wealthy. His goal was to be righteous, not rich. Right? That was Nehemiah's goal. And so instead, I devoted myself to the construction of the wall. And all my subordinates were gathered there for the work, and we did not buy any land. In other words, if somebody was poor, they did not buy their land at low cost because of desperation and then trying to resell it at a high marked up value. They weren't taking advantage of people. They weren't bottoming out the market and trying to buy stuff up. They weren't trying to take people's land because they were poor and they said, I'll tell you what, you give me land, I will give you food. They weren't doing that. Okay, that's not how Nehemiah functioned. Now, would it have been right for him to have accepted land from people for the sustenance of food during famine? Yeah, that would have been right. Joseph did it within Egypt in the book of Genesis. Like, that's just how societies functioned. If you can't afford something and you want to pay it or need to pay it, you sell something in order to pay it. Right? That's just kind of how that naturally works. And Nehemiah says, I'm not doing that at this time. Not that it will never happen in the future, but that's not what's happening now. Okay, so with that in mind, with those few verses, those three, 14, 15, and 16, okay, those three verses, here's a couple of principles that we get to learn. Ministry involves sacrifice, often up front. Okay, ministry will involve sacrifice, often up front. So if we wanted to do a church plant, and we were going to take several people, let's say 15, 20, 30 people, whatever, and we were going to take them and send them on the other end of the city over by Emerald Acres and plant a church out there. It would take, in order for that church to go, it would take a lot of sacrifice. Okay? It would take a lot of sacrifice up front. People who had rights to things might have to forego those rights just to make the ministry happen. Okay, so maybe for like the first year, whoever would pastor that church plant might say, okay, so for a bit, I'm going to work 30, 40 hours a week as pastor, but I'm also going to work 30, 40 hours a week at Rural King in order to pay up the bills so that we don't have to worry about being a financial burden upon the church to pay my salary. And while a salary would be right and appropriate, they might make that sacrifice of time from their family temporarily to help get the ministry started. Sometimes when ministry starts, you don't have a lot of people involved. Sometimes you're like when we started the diaper changing station, okay? And even just this past Bagel Fest, we had the diaper changing station going. It was there from, I remember all the hours that were involved. We set up at 3 o'clock on Thursday, and it ran until 10 o'clock at night, Thursday night, so that's like 7 hours. And then Friday, it started at 1 o'clock in the afternoon and went to 10 o'clock at night. That was 9 more hours. And then on Saturday, it started at 10 o'clock in the morning. It was supposed to, but the parade went late. So it technically opened up at 11, and it went until 10 o'clock at night, okay, which is 11 hours, right? So when you combine that all together, right, you're talking like a lot of hours of work. Okay, and we didn't have a lot of people signing up to help. We did have some. We're very grateful that Zach was here able to help. We're very grateful that we had Shannon there to help. We're very grateful that we had people like Ann and I believe Ross and Cindy were there. And I remember Sharon was there. So we had people that signed up for different hours here and there. But we still had like 10 unaccounted hours of nobody signing up, right? And so what happened is my family then, we did it. Right, and did we have the right not to be there? Yes. Did we had to give up stuff that we have rights to in order to be there to make sure that the ministry goes. And it was a worthwhile sacrifice to make it available. And the praise that we got from the community and the walls that got torn down, which is like I always call those wall-busting ministries, is the opposite of Nehemiah. He's trying to build a wall, but we want to tear down walls because there are walls that are built that are separating people from the gospel. It's called church history and all the ways that churches have screwed up and messed up and the evils that have been done and the wrongs that have been done that people want nothing to do with church. So we start doing ministries that are where people go, wow, here's a church doing something good. And they come to us like, this is awesome. And so what happens is we're metaphorically taking sledgehammers to people's walls away between them and the gospel, right? And so it's worth doing, but it means sacrifice. And I'm telling you, have you guys been outside the past weekend? It's been hot. I have a metaphor for what it's been like the past 3 days. The devil's armpit. That is what it has been for the past 3 days. It has been hot. It has been terribly hot and muggy and sweaty and humid. It's just been ick. And not on top of that, like my body, my temperature control is broken. So my body can't cool down. Right, I'm part lizard man, right? Like, that's kind of what's going on. Like my body can't adjust to the temperature like that. And so when I sweat, I get hotter and I get heat stroke much faster. And so it's part of just my biology. So when I get out there, once it hits a few hours, I start getting sick. But you know what? My daughter and I, we're putting puppets on our hands. We're going to go out and we're going to witness to people. And we're going to invite people to church. And we're going to scare people and make them swear. And then they'll feel guilty about doing it to a church. And maybe they'll show up. And so we just had a great time talking to people. And then we go back, sit down, and I chug down. Like it involved a whole lot of sacrifice. Now, when more people get involved and more people are doing things, then great. You know, then we can do less because we're able to share the work and share the load. But for a ministry to start, it involves sacrifice up front, right? And so that's what Nehemiah is dealing with, is sacrifice up front. And often it is those in leadership that sacrifice first to show the way, to be an example, right? To be what they want to see. And so that tends to be how that goes. And then the first people that begin to join the ministry, like they get the sacrifice. Like you guys that helped out, you know, you had to sacrifice to be there. You could have been someplace with air conditioning. You could have been someplace that had deep fried food. You know, you could have been home in your PJs, right? Chasing the dog with water balloons just because you can. Like you could have been doing stuff and you didn't. You were with us and that was sacrificing of you. And that was awesome because that's how ministry goes. So that's what Nehemiah is dealing with. That's principle number 1. Number 2, it looks like this. Ministry needs time, which means that those that are going to be involved in it have to be in it for the long haul. They can't do it for 1 week or 1 year and then say, that's it, we're done. We did it once, we didn't get great results, we're done. A lot of times you have to be in it for the long haul. You got to say, okay, we did it. Okay, it wasn't that we didn't get the results we were completely looking for. So is this something that we abandon, or is it something we can change and work with and improve? What were the weaknesses? What were the strengths? How can we capitalize the strengths? How can we build up the weaknesses into something that's stronger? And how can we make this more effective? And we have to think about it in the long haul. But our culture today doesn't think long-term like that. Our culture today is instant gratification. Our culture today is, I don't want to commit to anything that makes it feel like an obligation. I don't want to commit to anything that makes it feel like I'm stuck and trapped in a ministry for multiple years. So what happens is people will say, hey, do you need help on video? Sure, I need help on video. Want to run a camera? Sure, I'd love to run a camera. Hey, do you want to do it next week? I don't know about next week. It just, now it feels like I'm obligated to be here. Now it's a job, and now it's not. And then they never come back to church again. Like, seriously, that's what it's like. Okay, that is seriously what it's like. People aren't in it for the long haul. And I would love to say that the leadership is better, but it's not. Any guesses on 2025, from 2020 to 2025, what the average length of a youth worker, a youth leader is at a church for the United States of America? Any guesses? Any guesses how long the average length of a youth worker is in 2020 to 2025? 8 months to a year, and they quit. Anybody know the average length of a pastor? Same time period. Average length of a pastor, senior pastor, same time period. Answer, 2.5 to 3 years. Here's what's fascinating. Here's what statistics has shown repeatedly for Western civilization. The best years of a pastor's ministry is years 7 through 12. Those are the most productive. Those are the most vibrant. Those are the most because the first 6 years, you're stuck with having to make so many changes and getting so many things adjusted that you got to weed out what's going on. You got people that are holding back church development and church growth. They got to get ticked enough to leave, or you got to wait till they die, or something's got to happen, or they got to repent. That takes approximately 6 years to do on average, which allows the 7th year to finally have change and production and ministry without resistance from within the body. So then from year 7 to 12 is the most vibrant in the pastor's ministry. And then the average pastor quits around year 3. Think about that. Because it's year 3 where it really gets full of conflict. Because it's year 3 where people start saying, between 2 and 3, where people start realizing, you're not like the pastor from 40 years ago. You aren't doing things like we used to do. And then they start complaining and fighting and backbiting and sabotaging and spreading rumors, and stuff is going on. So eventually the pastor goes, I don't need this drama in my life. And they're out, and they leave just before it's about to get good. Because they have a hard time being in it for the long haul. Right? And so this is what we need to realize. If we're going to be involved in ministry, it is going to take time to develop. It is going to take time to tweak and to work with, and for it to be effective. It's going to take time. And to be involved in ministry means you got to be in it for the long haul. How long was Nehemiah committed to building a wall? How long was it? Do you remember how many it was? I think it's verse 15. How long was he in it? Or verse 14, how long was he in it? 12 what? Days? Hours? What? 12 years. I don't know about you. I've built things in my life. I have hammered up drywall. After 8 hours in one day, and then I do that for several days. Like, I renovated an entire house before. I tore all the drywall off. I tore the floor out. I tore the studs out and the subfloor out. I had people come over, and we personally put in all new electrical, all new plumbing, put up all new subfloor, put up all new drywall, hung all new cabinets. Right? It took us a month to do it. After a month, I didn't want to see another nail again. After a month, I didn't want to hear. Someone's like, hey, I saw you did a good job. Can you come drywall my house? Eat rocks. I don't want to see another drywall. I don't want to hammer. I don't want to think about another. Like, no, you hire that out. That's after 1 month. 12 years. Right? Like, my heart goes out to factory workers that work the assembly line, and that they've worked there for 12 years going click, click, click. That's what Nehemiah's doing. Stone, stone, a little bit of mortar. Stone, stone, pot, 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 pot. Make it line up. Oh, look, jerks trying to knock it down. Go away, jerks. Stone, stone. 12 years. Ministry takes time. You gotta be in it for the long haul. You gotta be willing to say through thick and think of it. Let's just have some fun. Let's look at this at a whole other level. Ready for this? Change the word ministry to marriage. To have a healthy marriage, it takes time. And you got to be in it for the long haul, right? Through thick or thin, good or poor, rich or poor, in sickness and in health, and on it goes. Basically, it's saying, congratulations, life's going to suck for like 50 years. I hope you're in it for the long haul, or you're going to have a problem. Right? It is going to be hard, and it's going to take time, and it's going to be a lot of work. You're going to involve a lot of sacrifice. It's going to be upfront. You're going to have to deal with somebody who wants a house a different temperature than you. You have to deal with somebody who wants a different amount of blankets than you on the bed. You're going to have to deal with somebody who puts different things in different cabinets. You have to deal with somebody who eats food at a different time of the day. This is when lunch is. No, it's not. I eat at 11. Well, I eat at 12:30. And then you get a kid that eats at 10. You go freak. And then it's like, and then it just, you're like, and it takes sacrifice. Up front. Having kids takes sacrifice up front. Right? And then you need to be in parenting for the long haul because parenting takes time. Right? Like this, a ministry applies in various ways like this. All these principles, they apply in various ways. It's not just about church work. These are going to be applicable to your job, to your marriage, to parenting, and on it goes. Right? So just kind of keep that in mind. I just want to draw that connection for you. So you're not thinking like, well, that was an administrative sermon. No, like it helps everywhere else too. So just relax and unclench and enjoy. Okay, because we got some more to go through yet. We just got to, like this is just the first two. We got 2 more to go. So if already this is kicking you funny, like just wait. Okay, and so Nehemiah shows hospitality. Now this is where we started with at the very beginning. So now you get to see where these connect. Okay, just in case you thought the whole front part was just for fun. Now, there's a reason for it. Okay, Nehemiah's hospitality, verses 17 and 18. Check this out. So there were 150 Jews and officials. So how many Jews and officials? 150, so not a hard question. Okay, as well as, it's a fancy way of saying, in addition to those 150, there were more. Okay, as well as guests from the surrounding nations. Where were they located at? 150 plus people were located where? In the church gym? Where were they located at? At Nehemiah's table, at his house. Okay, so just note that for a moment here. We're going to come back to that in just a minute. Okay, so there were 150 Jews and officials, as well as other guests from the surrounding nations at my table each day, which means they were there more than one day, or they would leave and come back over the course of more than one day. Okay, each day 1 ox, 6 choice sheep, and some fowl were prepared for me. And an abundance of all kinds of wine was provided every 10 days. How often do you have people coming over to your house, and when do you say, that's enough? How often can people knock on your door before you say, go away? Like, this house is closed. Okay? So he has people that are coming over daily. This is just what he's doing. This is life for him. Okay, this is his lifestyle. People are just coming over. This is what's happening. And so he has food every day being prepared, and he has wine coming out every 10 days, which means they're eating more than they're drinking, so I guess that's a good thing. Okay, no sign of drunkenness, which is great. But I did not demand the food allotted to the governor because the burden on the people was so heavy. In other words, he funded it all himself. He didn't ask the people to pay for it. Okay, and you might say, how did Nehemiah have all that money? Well, remember, Artaxerxes wrote him a check, and the number was blank. And so he used it wisely. He didn't use it to get rich. He used it to bless people. See, Nehemiah was one of those guys that used money and loved people. He didn't love money and use people. Right? So he had his righteousness in the right direction here. And so that's what he did. And so, some things we get to learn from this, some principles here for you. Due to demands, it's great for people to meet in groups. This is great. Okay, it is great for people to meet in groups. For example, Nehemiah had how many people over to his house? You remember the number? Over 150 people. You know how, so let's just break this down. You know how long it would take to visit those people at their house one at a time? You know how long that would take? Okay, and so what Nehemiah does is he says, hey, you know what? I could go to all y'all's houses, but I'll tell you what. How about all y'all together come to mine? Okay, and he brings people to his house. He doesn't bring them to the temple, which is built, by the way, because they're building the wall around the temple. He doesn't bring them to like the church gym, he does it at his house. It's fascinating. Now, here's the thing. How many people came over to his house? I want you to forget that number. Over 150 people. How many people can fit in your house? Probably not 150, at least not comfortably. Fair? Okay. So, how big is Nehemiah's house? So let me just say this. I'm going to stick my neck out. You're going to hate me later. I'm just going to speak something of an observation that you may never have considered. People like to poo-poo upon pastors who have big houses. They get upset and they say, why should a pastor be paid so many hundreds of thousands of dollars a year? And why should they have a house worth $500,000, $600,000? That seems inappropriate. What if they're doing ministry like Nehemiah? What if they have a church of 1,000 people? 2,000 people. Let's just go with a simple number, 1,000 people. What if they have a church of 1,000 families or 1,000 people in their congregation? How long would it take them to visit all those people? It would take forever, right? If they were to visit two people once a day, at the end of 365 days, they would have met with like 730 people. Which means you got 270 people not even getting a single visit from that pastor in a year. And then they're going to be like, why doesn't the pastor like us? Has nothing to do with you. Has everything to do with he's got 1,000 people to deal with, as well as his own family, as well as things in life. Right? Like it's just impossible. So what can he do? Get a house big enough to say, hey, I want you 200 people to come over in an environment that's at my house. And then people go, well, why can't it be held at an event center? Because then it's not hospitality. It's an event if it's held at a center. Right? It has to be held at your house if it's going to be hospitality. Right? So there's a difference, by the way. When you go to like a gym or a Lions Club or whatever, you go and you show up and it's basically a gala. And that can be nice. You can have a good time. But it means so much more and is significantly different when you're at the person's house. Okay, it's so much more. There's something so personal about being at someone's house where they say, come on in. Let's just sit. You know what? Are you hungry? I got you. You don't need to bring anything. I got you. And you here, have something to eat. Oh, you're thirsty? I got you. You know, hey, let's play some music. Let's play a game. Let's have a fire and let's make s'mores. Let's have a good time. You know, in fact, just a couple weeks ago, my wife and I brought the Holy Hands team from Charleston. We had them all over to our house. We had like 20-some people over to our house. And it was a great time, and it was wonderful because we bring groups over. It's just kind of what we do from time to time because we're trying to, and I take lessons from Nehemiah to try to show hospitality. It's hard visiting everybody at their place throughout the given year because, again, I got a 3-year-old, and I got a 13-year-old, and I got a 15-year-old. Life is crazy at the Coin House. You know, they're like, well, other pastors are able to visit all these people. Yeah, and they're either childless or their kids are grown. Okay, so they got a different lifestyle. I got different time things going on, and I can't function that way and still be a parent, right? Like, so I visit people, but I can't do as much as some people can. So I bring people over. That's what I like to do, and which is why sometimes we'll have like a social, and we'll put it here in the back just to get people meeting together. But even then, it feels like an event. So at some point, we're going to try to figure out how to every now and then just say, hey, y'all, just come on over. And we're going to put up a fire and just have a good time. And we're going to put up a badminton net and then we're going to play spike the volleyball with it anyway, just to see who gets scared. And we're just going to have a good time, right? Just play games, because it's going to be hospitality, because that's what Nehemiah is showing. And let me just point this out just to make it even more uncomfortable. If it's going to be true, like biblical hospitality meant that it is people you are not related to. Biblical hospitality meant that the people coming over were not your family. If you're like, why not? If my family comes over, I treat them with great hospitality. No, you don't. You treat them like a brother or a sister or an uncle or whatever. And you're being a good brother, sister, cousin, uncle, whatever. But that is not hospitality in a biblical sense. That is being a good family person, right? You want true hospitality, it needs to be somebody you're not related to. Okay, that's hospitality, where you're inviting people over that is not about family relations. Okay, and so that's kind of what's going on. So that's the principle we get to learn from this. Okay, and then the fourth one, we've already covered it. I did it the exact same time. You're welcome. Hospitality is in the home. It is in the home. Outside of the home is an event, but hospitality is in the home. And so here's what we get to learn from Nehemiah. 4 amazing strategies here, 4 amazing principles that help make a ministry function. That needs to have this element of hospitality or personalness to it, and it needs to be able to be organized the way that we saw it organized as before. So we got a couple of principles here, but there's one more neat thing to kind of keep in mind. And we're going to learn more. It's not like this is an exhaustive list. You're like, that's it? No, it's not it, but that's it for chapter 5. Okay, we still got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Like, we got principles coming, right? Okay, like, this is not exhaustive. Don't think that this 4 is all there is. It's just for right now. These are these 6 verses. Okay, but we have one more thing. Why did Nehemiah do it this way? Why did he sacrifice up front? Why is it that he was able to have this type of hospitality? Why is it that he orchestrated this way and that he served this way? He was in it for the long haul, and it was going to be at his house, not at the temple or someplace, quote-unquote, convenient. Okay, why? What was his motivation? And we find it in 2 verses. Verses 15, and then the one we haven't read yet, verse 19. Here's what Nehemiah says. He talked about how their subordinates also oppressed the people. He was talking about how I didn't do this. I didn't eat as a governor. You might remember that. And then he says, I did not do this because of the fear of God. Okay, and then verse 19. At the end of all of this, he just says a prayer. A 1-sentence, 1-verse prayer. Remember me or look upon me with favor. Oh my God, for all that I have done for this people. In other words, Lord, of all the sacrifice, of all the hard work, of all the time, of all the investment, of all the sweat, blood spilled, pain, Lord, of all the inconvenience on having people over, like I've seen what mess just my kids make. Let alone 100 people at my house. I mean, I'd have to vacuum for a week. Right? Of all the mess, all that had to be done, God, I hope you're pleased with it. I hope it brought a smile to your face, Lord. I hope it honored you. I hope you looked upon it and you were happy. And that you would look upon me with favor. And that favor doesn't mean prosperity. It doesn't mean anything like that. It literally is, God, may you be blessed. Jesus uses a similar word in the New Testament, so it's in Greek, so it's not the exact same word, but it has the same idea. Blessed are those who God will look upon them with favor. Who? So God, may you have been blessed by this. And that you would look upon me with favor, that you are pleased. See, Nehemiah loved his God so much that he looked around all he had, he looked around at all he owned, and he asked himself, how can I serve God and love these people with what I've got? How can I look at everything that I've got and then honor God with it by serving his people? Which brings us to the very convicting question, what are you doing with what you've got? And you might say, well, I don't have space big enough for 150 people. You got space big enough for 2? Well, I don't have money to be able to feed all these people. Well, we do have something in our custom called BYOB, bring your own bag, right? Like you can work something out, right? Or come over for games. Don't come over for a meal. And pick a time that isn't where you're going to be eating. Like there's ways of dealing with it, right? And so what are you doing with what you've got? Or what are you not doing with what you've got? Or another way of looking at it would be this. How can you serve God with what you owe? With what you own? So look around. See what you got. And say, God, I don't have much. But maybe like a widow's mite, maybe you might be able to take this one little penny. Maybe you might take this one little thing that I've got, as insignificant as it may seem. And Lord, maybe you can use this in a way that brings you glory. Maybe you can use, because it's not about resources. It's not about skills and events. It is about how to love God and how to love people with whatever it is you've got. So what are you doing with what you own? God has gifted you with a lot. And he's gifted people with different amounts. We don't need to compare with who has what and who doesn't. We just have to ask, how can I serve him with what I've got? Let's have a word of prayer. Heavenly Father, Lord, we are so grateful. We are so thankful that, Lord, you are not limited to anything. You can take a couple of fish and some bread, and you can use it to minister to many. Lord, you can take a little bit of oil and use it to make a lot. So, Lord, help us to just trust you. Help us to love you. Help us to love others so much that with whatever we got, we'll just serve. We'll just serve. This we ask in your Son's name, Jesus Christ. Amen. And you guys are dismissed. Ice cream right straight ahead. Woohoo!